Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's session on visualizing connected data for deeper intelligence. I'm super happy to have the Progress MarkLogic team with us today. Christian Ohlenborger and Mitch Shepard, the product managers of FastTrack, as well as Mike Woodridge, the engineering lead. Today, they are going to take you through our agenda. They're going to introduce you to MarkLogic FastTrack. They're going to show you how to get started with FastTrack and how to build a 3-tier application. And in the end, you're also going to see a demo of the finished product. At the end of the webinar, we're going to open the conversation for questions. So please feel free to use the GoToWebinar questions panel to ask any questions during the session, and we're going to try to get through as many of those questions as possible. With that, I would like to hand it over to Mitch.
Thanks, Sophia. Data today exists in a variety of sources and forms. Many of our organizations that we're working with have geospatial data, temporal data, triples and semantic data, and a variety of other data types, but they're challenged by having to analyze all of it. And unfortunately, many of the tools on the market only give a partial view of what's really going on with their data because they only deal with one specific aspect of data at a time. We find that the customers really need a bespoke solution for how they explore their multi-structured data. And this solution needs to help them work with all of their data, not just a single type. It needs to be able to help them search, interact with, and visualize it in one place. And also the solution needs to be able to help our data users and decision makers uncover unique insights and relationships across all of their data in a singular, easy to use interface. We are excited to announce MarkLogic FastTrack, which you can see here is a React UI toolkit for building high performance search-driven applications to visually explore connected data in MarkLogic fast. How does it work? FastTrack is a toolkit or an NPM library of widgets that users can pull in as they build their React applications. Before FastTrack, customers building applications on top of MarkLogic really required a lot of expertise and custom code. But today, customers using FastTrack can bring their applications to production up to 90% faster. These FastTrack widgets allow users to visualize all aspects of their data, utilizing search, filters, graph views, and a variety of other capabilities. And as a result of being able to visualize all of this complex data, FastTrack really enables our customers to better analyze and explain their data as patterns and relationships become easier to identify. So what exactly is inside MarkLogic FastTrack? As I mentioned before, we include a variety of customizable UI components that are ready to use out of the box. Included are visualization techniques for any data. You'll see widgets that support graph views, geospatial map views, timelines, grids, charts, and textual widgets. We include widgets that allow you to perform full text search. This will let you search across all your data that is stored in MarkLogic, as well as custom facets and dynamic filters that will help you navigate and dive deeper into the details of your data. We provide a data access layer, so no ETL or API integration is required to connect with MarkLogic server. One of our widgets is the MarkLogic context widget, handles the communication with the database and also interactions between the widgets to ensure that they are all communicating one with another. We also provide sample applications that are shipped with the product. And this is really a blueprint for allowing users to understand examples for how they themselves could build their own applications with the toolkit. As part of our proof of concept, as we internally were building out FastTrack, is we challenged one of our teammates, our consultant Beth Goldsmith, to build an application using FastTrack on top of her full-time job. And this is a direct quote from her. She said that she needed to build these 3 interfaces. She had 2 weeks to do it, and we were really trying to monitor, what kind of improvements are we seeing. It was later identified that something of this level of complexity would have required a single developer to it would have required six months or so to deliver this application. And using FastTrack, Beth was able to create these three distinct interfaces in as little as 2 weeks. So a real testament to the value add that FastTrack brings in helping customers bring their applications to production quicker and also requiring less developer resources. Lastly, I'm going to show the FastTrack really builds on the MarkLogic story that we've been telling to date. MarkLogic does a really good job with ingestion and modeling and preparation and enrichment of data. And FastTrack complements this by adding on a UI tool stack, allowing users to build modern graph and visualizations to be able to explore their data in further detail while also not compromising security and governance. So a lot of strong benefits with using FastTrack in terms of maintaining security, ease of development, quicker time to production, all by using and bringing in these FastTrack widgets into your React application. And with that, I'm going to pass it over to Mike Wooldridge, who will, as Sophia mentioned, give us a little bit more insight into how easy it is to get started with FastTrack in building an application. Over to you, Mike.
Okay, thanks, Mitch. Yeah, I'm Mike Wooldridge. I'm the architect and lead developer of FastTrack, and I'm going to give a technical overview of the product. I'm going to show you how to set up a 3-tier application with FastTrack and start using the widgets to build a MarkLogic search application. So let me share my screen. Okay, so let's take an overview, bird's eye view of FastTrack and where it fits into your 3-tier search application. FastTrack is a library of React components. So it lives inside your UI layer of your application, your presentation layer. You're going to install it from a TGZ file with npm, and that's going to bring in a number of React components. We also call them widgets that then you can use to build your application. These widgets include, say, a search box for accepting, user query information. Results display widgets that will take the results coming back from MarkLogic and then display it in different ways. We have a number of widgets for building out faceted search, and you can use those to summarize your documents in different ways and allow users to constrain their searches based on different properties in their documents. And there's many more widgets, and some of them you'll see in a moment as I start building out our app. The other core component of FastTrack is this MarkLogic context widget. And that widget sits between the presentation widgets that I just talked about and the back end, which includes MarkLogic. So all the HTTP calls that are sent from the UI to the back end are handled by MarkLogic context. So the presentation widgets aren't talking to MarkLogic directly. They're really talking through, a single place MarkLogic context. And so in our example, we'll have a middle tier server. So that's the middle tier of our 3-tier app. And it's going to be brokering all the HTTP calls between the UI and MarkLogic. And of course, MarkLogic is our data layer, and it's serving up all the documents that we're going to visualize in our React application. All right, a couple other things to set the stage for this example. We've loaded some documents into MarkLogic, and we're using just the standard default databases that get installed when you set up MarkLogic initially. We have a documents database, and we've put 3 documents in there, 3 JSON files. And each one of those files represents a person. Let's take a look at one right now. And it's a relatively small JSON file, but it's rich in that it has a lot of different types of data here. And we're going to be able to leverage those different types of data, in our widgets in a moment. We have latitude and longitude information, which allows us to put that document information on a geospatial map if we want with FastTrack. We have relationship information here. In triple form, we have subjects, predicates, and objects. We can take that information and use it in a network graph. And then we have some free form, textual content that'll help us, do a variety of searches and see that everything's working. The other thing we have loaded is in our modules database, another one of the default databases, is some search options. And that's going to control what comes back from the MarkLogic backend when you execute a search. We've set up a couple of constraints, and those are required for setting up faceted search in our UI. We're going to leverage one of those constraints when we do faceted search. And we're also including some of that raw document data in our search results. And since the documents are pretty small, we're just adding each of those documents to the search results when they come back. And we'll be able to leverage that raw document content in our widgets as well. So with that, we can jump in to our React application and start writing some code and see what comes up in the browser. So I'm going to switch to my IDE. And this is just a vanilla basic React application scaffolded with the Vite framework. We have a main.jsx file, and that's kind of just the root of our React application. It's pulling in an app component, and it's our app component that's going to show everything in our browser. So we'll quickly edit the main.jsx file and then do the rest of our editing in our app component. All right. So the first thing we're going to do is set up the communication between the UI and the backend. And we're going to do that in our main.jsx file. And we're going to use a helper component that works along with MarkLogic context called MarkLogic provider. So I'm going to copy this text. I'll be switching from my notes file to our other files and just augmenting and iteratively adding as we go along here. So we just updated our main.jsx file. Let me save it. And we've brought in MarkLogic provider from FastTrack, and we're wrapping the app component. And we're wrapping it with the following information. We're saying to our application, our backend exists at localhost. That's the host we're going to be hitting because everything's running locally on my laptop here. The middle tier is exposing its API at port 4001. Okay. If we have search options set up on the server, we can define them here. And as we saw a moment ago, we do have some search options running on MarkLogic. And for this basic demo app, we're also passing through some authentication information. And of course, this would be different in a real world app, and it would be handled differently based on your use case. All right, so let's start adding some widgets to our app now from FastTrack. I'm going to update our app component with some FastTrack widgets. We're bringing in MarkLogic context, we're bringing in search box, and we're bringing in result snippet. Search box is going to provide a way for a user to type in free-form text queries, and result snippet is going to grab any results information that comes back and display it in a real basic way in our UI. And because these widgets understand MarkLogic and the APIs that we're hitting, we're going to be able to get a search app working very quickly with very little configuration because we know what's coming back and how to deal with it. So let's save this and then go to our app in our browser. All right. So we see the text box here, our search box widget. I'm going to type in some text, execute a search. Oh, nothing's coming back. Well, that's expected because we need a little more information here. We actually need to use the context to execute our search and then get some response information back from the back end. So let's do that next. We're going to add some event handlers to make our search actually work in our UI. All right, so what have we done here? We've added an on-search event handler to our search box. So whenever someone now clicks the search button, it's going to execute this function handle search. Handle search is going to take the information from our search box, which is stored in params, and it's going to grab the query text out of it and put it into our context object. And we're going to set the query text property in our context to whatever's coming out of our search box. And then down in our results snippet, we're telling our results snippet, this is where the results are going to come back in MarkLogic's context. And results snippet is going to keep an eye on this property here. And when it changes, it's going to update the UI. So now when we go back to our app, let's just refresh. Execute a search. And now we're getting data back from our backend from MarkLogic. All right, and we're getting all 3 documents that are in the database here. And in a way, this looks simple, but in another way, it's very powerful, because now we can basically write whatever search queries that we know MarkLogic can handle and get data back. We can do a Boolean query, run or walk. That's bringing back information. And notice MarkLogic can take run and actually match it to content that it has running, or walk and match it to content that has walking, because we have stemming turned on in the back end, and it can expand our searches and get more information. So we now have a MarkLogic search application, and let's now take it further. And one thing we can do is, okay, we have some basic information coming back with results snippet. How can we then augment results snippet to, say, access more features that are provided by this widget? I'm going to switch over now to FastTrack Storybook, which is part of our documentation, and it basically allows you to review all the widgets available in our library. So over on the left side, we're listing all the widgets that we can use in our application, and we can see the ones that we're already using. Search box and Storybook give us an example of search box here, and it shows us all the props that we can pass into the widget to control how it behaves and the features it exposes. We can do the same for results snippet. Here's an example. That's kind of what we see in our app right now. And we can scroll down and see all the features and all the props we can use to control what happens in our search results there in results snippet. So let's say, we want to turn on pagination in our results snippet widget. I can do that with this pagination footer prop. I see it accepts a Boolean value. The default is false. I can change it to true to turn on pagination in the footer. And I can also set the size of that pagination with pagination size. And here it's telling me what possible properties I can pass in. So now I can go to my code and I can edit results snippet. Let's add pagination footer, set it to true. Let's add pagination size, set it to small, save. And now when we go back to our app, hey, we have pagination in the footer. And we're not going to get much pagination action here because we only have 3 documents, but we do see a summary here. And it works. Great. Let's keep rolling now, and let's add faceted search to our MarkLogic search application. So now I am going to add a little more code to our app.jsx file to set up faceting. So what have we done here? We've brought in a new widget, string facet. We've added it to our UI down here. And we've configured it to show the status property and to summarize the status property and allow us to apply constraints on our search to the status property. So each of our documents has a status value. It can be active or inactive. And we're pointing our widget to that property here. We're also saying where that property exists in our context search response. We're saying we want to title it status with a capital S. And then as you'll see, we can click checkboxes to apply facet constraints. And on that text box select, we're going to add an event handler to basically tell MarkLogic context, hey, we just added a string facet constraint. Add it to our application state. And then our widgets that care about that will update and update their display. So I'm going to save that. Let's switch back over to our app, and there it is. Now we have faceted search, not just text-based search. And we can click active just to see all the documents that have status equal to active. Same with inactive. And faceted search just like that, easy with our string facet widget. Now I could add additional string facets to our app. I could add other type of faceting. I could constrain the document, say by a date and time if they have that information in here. Here's a birth date. We could add a date range facet to constrain by that. We could add numeric constraints that say limit to the person's salary, or bucketed facets that provide a series of ranges that then they could select similar to the regular string facet. All right, so that's faceted search. Let's move on. And now, as we saw previously, our documents do have latitude and longitude information in them. So let's leverage that and use our GeoMap widget to display a map and markers on that map corresponding to our search results. So I just added to our app.jsx file. We're bringing in GeoMap. We're adding it to our UI here with just some minimal configuration information. We want to center it basically on the United States. We want to set a default zoom of 4. And we want to have a container that's 300 by 560 pixels. But the real core of the functionality for GeoMap is we're passing in, once again, context.search response results, just like we did for our result snippet. And we need to do a little transformation before GeoMap can work. GeoMap's not quite expecting regular search results. It needs those latitude and longitude values formatted in a certain way. And GeoMap is actually leveraging a library from Esri called ArcGIS. So that's a library that's displaying our geospatial map in our UI. So we basically have to transform it so it works the way it's expected for ArcGIS. That's not really too hard to do. Here's our transformation function. And really the core is we're grabbing our latitude out of our search results and putting it here in a point object, doing the same for longitude. And then we're just saying, hey, we want to style our markers in a certain way. It's going to have this orange tomato color. It's going to have a certain size. And we just want a simple marker, which basically gives us a disk on the map. So let's save, switch back, and there it is. We have a map of the United States. We have 3 results, and each of those results is placed where it should be on the map of the United States. So prove it's working. I can search for Ohio. that returns our Ohio result, and there it is. It's a marker on Ohio here. And you'll see that everything's acting in a coordinated fashion because they are all referencing the same MarkLogic context search response. All right. So from here, we're going to add one more widget, and that's our network graph widget. And as we saw previously, we have some relationship information in our documents, and we're going to display those relationships in our UI. So here's our code that adds network graph. We're just augmenting what we did for GeoMap. We're bringing in the network graph widget. And this actually wraps another library similar to GeoMap. It's wrapping a network graphing library called regraph. And a lot of the information we're passing in the network graph will be specific to the regraph innards. And we're, again, going to need to do another transformation step. So we're providing the data that regraph knows how to use and then display. So we're putting in network graph right next to our GeoMap. We're doing minimal configuration here. Again, we're pointing at our search response and the results inside there. We're setting up the container. And basically, the key part is our transformation. And that's where we're going to take our search response and convert it to something that network graph knows how to use. And this is all documented in our documentation. And you can also get information about how to do this, in Storybook along with our other documentation. So here's the transformation that's occurring. And it's a little bigger than our GeoMap, but basically it's taking the subject from each relation, the object from each relation, and then the predicate from each relation, and building out our network graph nodes and the connections between them. And actually, a lot of this is just then formatting. We want to put a border around the nodes. We want to color them that tomato color if they're coming directly from our results. If they're just a relationship that aren't in our results, we want to just color them gray to distinguish the two types. And then we want to add arrows to our connecting lines between the nodes. And with that set up, we can go back to our UI, and there we are. And just like that, we have a network graph being displayed in our UI. And again, they're all using the same search results. So when we do a search up here, they're all going to update in a coordinated fashion. Here we see two search results. We see two markers on the map, and we see two orange nodes in our network graph. And our person 1001 has a direct relationship with 1002, so that appears in gray. And again, we can bring faceting into the mix as well. And they all work in a connected, coordinated fashion, thanks to MarkLogic context. And with that, I am finished with my demo. So we saw about a half dozen widgets working in concert. And thanks to MarkLogic context, they're working together. Christian is going to take over and show some more advanced applications that use some of these same widgets, but use them in a more complex fashion. So all yours, Christian.
All right, thank you. It's always interesting to see how quickly you can put together something pretty interesting and powerful. So thank you. I think I have the best job in this webinar, and that I get to showcase some pretty interesting demonstration or sample applications that we've put together. And these are included in the FastTrack package, so you can get them, open up the hood, and see what we've done. So what we're looking at here is a combination of a knowledge graph that Mike just demonstrated, and also a timeline on the left here. So on this network graph, this is our high value target demo application, by the way. So when you get that in your package, you can take a look. On the right side here, I've got a network graph. I have people, facilities, and all the relationships that are linking them. I also have faceting that Mike just went over. So if I want to just see what people were associated with an event, I can limit my views there, scroll through and find that stuff out. And then, we also thought, well, what if we connect a timeline with this network graph? That might help us sort of cut through a lot of noise. Like I can certainly do a text-based search to narrow what I'm looking for. You saw that just a moment ago with Mike's quickly assembled application. But what if I wanted to use a timeline? Let's say I knew something was happening or happened on, for example, May 9th-ish, 2010, right? I can see something happened here. If I click here, the network graph you saw just responded by zooming in on some relevant nodes. I have a person, I have, looks like a vehicle and some locations as well as the relationships. So you can see quickly, it probably faster, frankly, than doing a text-based search. When you have timeline, you can just click on a given moment and see what is relevant. So we like that. We thought, combining the time temporal element with the network graph was helpful at helping people narrow down what their search for what they're looking for. But we thought, what if we added a geospatial element to that as well? So I'm going to shift focus here. This is our crime map demonstration application. It's a pretty noisy view. I'm going to walk you through how to clear out the noise and what we're looking at as well. But this idea is more sort of law enforcement based, where essentially there's a crime spree and there's a number of other reported crimes within an area. Wanted to demonstrate how somebody could use FastTrack and MarkLogic to narrow down their search to find potentially other events that were committed by the suspects. So we're looking at a geospatial, well, a network graph with a geospatial overlay to it. So as Mike pointed out, the data that's on this has the appropriate latitude and longitude elements to be plotted on a map. So right now I'm going to use basically a distance slider to just quiet the noise and set the table here. So what I've got in the blue is essentially sort of a crime spree, right? I've got a vehicle stolen, a couple of sightings of the suspects, and then a vehicle abandoned. You can see at the bottom, I also have a timeline, and now those events are also plotted on the timeline. So I know everything that's occurred here. So I can also now take a look at what else may have occurred within a certain radius. So I'm going to use this distance slider and open up to about a quarter of a mile or so. So this radius is from each one of the reported events, right? So maybe I'm thinking they committed some other crimes and I want to take a look. Let's shorten this search because as you saw, there's a whole lot going on. Let's see maybe what makes sense. So if I'm looking at the timeline below, I see around here these sort of events maybe were within a relevant time. They might be of interest. So if I click on this first other event here, I see the network graph zoomed in and sort of flashed, and I can see it was this assault event. If I click on it, you'll see we also wired up a window card, so you can go ahead and this is totally customizable. You can put in whatever information you wanted. In this sort of use case, right, we put in sample 911 transcript, so I could find details to see if they match the description of folks I was looking for. But as I'm looking at this, right, if I didn't have the map portion, if I just was dealing with network graph and timeline, I might think this makes sense. But given the geospatial element, I have them spotted at this location, confirmed, probably around like 3 something in the morning, and then this event happening at say 4 something, they would have to almost double back to the scene of the crime. So this sort of geospatial element makes me a little dubious that this is the same group of people. So I'm probably going to be less likely to consider that. I'm going to also consider this one here. Now this one probably is a little more plausible. So I've got a confirmed sighting of the suspects here at this time. And then it looks like they potentially could have laid low and then potentially committed a robbery here. We didn't spend time poring over the data to make this story perfect. We really just wanted to illustrate how adding that third element of the geospatial really gives you almost an exponential insight that you didn't have before when you just had timeline and network graph. And also maybe I was also thinking I want to narrow down my search, and you know, Mike demonstrated this as well, but maybe I want to say, okay, I'm only concerned with other robberies. I can of course narrow it further by using a text search as well. So just by typing robbery and all of the other events then go away. So and you'll notice a lot of the events here faded away too. That's because MarkLogic context is keeping them all connected. So yeah, we think this really illustrates how adding these different elements will give you deeper intelligence into what you're looking for. So, and like I said, these are packaged with FastTrack, so you can open up the hood and check them out. So that's all I have to show today. I think we can go to question and answer.
Thanks, Christian. That was a great demo. So I'm going to invite everyone back, and let's look at the questions in the chat. We have one about kind of an integration with another MarkLogic product. Can FastTrack use the data and data model created in Data Hub Central without any additional customization on the concepts and relationships created? That's probably a little bit of a technical question, but let's see if we can actually address this one on the spot.
Yeah, you know, the JSON coming back from data created in Data Hub can be easily mapped into the widgets I demonstrated, just like we're mapping the sample data. The mapping, there's a couple of different configuration strategies we can do for mapping. One is passing a JSON object that basically just specifies where in those payloads the necessary data exists, be it, you know, latitude and longitude or triples or what have you. And once you point it to the right place in that payloads, they will display correctly in the widgets. And for more complex payloads, you can use transformation functions, as I showed in my example. So nothing's keeping you from using the Data Hub based final data, or you know, any other payload that's coming back from MarkLogic, be it from the vanilla V1 search or a custom endpoint.
Thanks, Mike. Let's see. I have another couple more questions here. Do you guys have any plans on incorporating AI into the product?
I can take that one. We're always looking at new technologies and initiatives. We're doing some research right now in the field of AI and how it would integrate with FastTrack. We don't have any concrete dates for incorporating that capability into the product, but it is an active research initiative right now. So more on that to come.
Yeah, and one thing sort of related to that, in addition to the Esri geospatial feature we saw and the network graph that we leverage some products from Cambridge Intelligence, we're also using some Kendo React components under the hood. And we're planning to leverage that in our AI features, as well as Kendo has a conversational UI widget that's great for bringing that into UI.
All right, we have two questions about training. Two different people have asked if there will be training, online training available about FastTrack in MarkLogic University, maybe.
The bulk of our technical onboarding right now is in the form of documentation. We are working with our documentation and enablement teams to be able to provide more resources, but for the time being, it's strictly in the form of documentation. So we provide examples for widget configurations and things like that. We are also providing with the FastTrack offering, as we kind of mentioned earlier, and Christian demoed those example scenarios that give kind of a blueprint for how the widgets can be configured and showcase how they can interact one with another.
Okay, more questions are pouring in actually. That's an interesting one about semaphore. How FastTrack could potentially be used with data from a model built in semaphore. Are there any plans to make some of the FastTrack widget available in semaphore?
I gotta unmute. We don't have anything in the near term to integrate directly with Semaphore, but I believe Semaphore can export a model for import to MarkLogic server, which I believe would make it available. So it's sort of an indirect answer, but yeah, if you can get it into MarkLogic, you can use it.
Okay, maybe one final question for today. Is React the only framework that is currently supported by FastTrack?
Yeah, as of right now, all of our widgets are React based. So if customers are using other frameworks such as Angular or things like that, please feel free to let us know. We're always looking for input on ways to enhance the product. But right now we are, yeah, React only.
Okay, we just got another question in, so if you guys don't mind, actually two, let's see how many we can get through. Is there also a widget for presenting data in tabular format?
Yeah, we have a data grid widget. It's actually wrapping the Kendo data grid, and it exposes all the features that you have in the underlying data grid component from Kendo, along with some helper props that target the MarkLogic payloads. So yeah, we didn't show that specifically in our demos today, but it's there, and you can see it in our storybook and our documentation.
Okay, I think we expand on this one. So I don't see it in full. So React is mostly JSON based. Do the components work with XML data from the MarkLogic server too?
Currently not natively. In one of our demo apps, we are taking XML data from the MarkLogic backend, doing a conversion in the example middle tier, and then using the converted JSON in our example app. Currently, yeah, it's really JSON focused, given it's for React UIs, JavaScript UIs.
Okay, two more questions here. Let me take a look. Oh, okay. This is, I think, from somebody who knows our server product very well. Besides text search widget, is there a way to include a widget based on Optic API?
So that is something that we are looking at right now. That would be a future enhancement, but being able to return results using Optic is definitely an area of interest for us as well in a soon to be upcoming version of FastTrack. But as of right now, we don't have concrete dates. Go for it, Mike. Sorry.
Yeah, yeah. What Mitch says is totally true. We also offer in our context a just generic HTTP calling method that allows you to hit whatever endpoint you want, given if you have custom, resources installed on MarkLogic, or if you want to hit the Optic API currently, get JSON back from that and do what you will with that, and including pipetting it into all the widgets you just saw. So we do support FastTrack, but not in a sort of configurable, more convenient way. But you can definitely hit FastTrack Optic endpoints and get that data back, and very easily with transformations make them work with our widgets currently. But as Mitch said, we'll working to come out with even easier ways, configurable ways to hit Optic and get them easily into the widgets as well.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Thank you to the product team for the wonderful demo and answering your questions. Anyone who hasn't gotten their question answered, we're going to make sure we follow up with you individually. We're super excited to share that FastTrack is available today. If you want to know more about how to get started, please don't hesitate to reach out to us to talk to our representatives, our sales team, or inquire about how we can get a personalized demo. Thanks again. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you at the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.